In today's world, politics is a touchy subject, in that different political parties have different ideologies that clash. While this is the case when debating politics, geopolitics, the geography of politics, is very interesting to discuss. One concentration of it is worldwide political systems, which is the focus of today's episode. Let's explore it. Geopolitics is a subject that started with the first advanced civilizations thousands of years ago. Before that, it was more haphazard. In antiquity, early human societies often organized themselves into tribal or clan-based structures. Leadership was typically based on hereditary chiefs, tribal councils, or theocratic rule, where religious leaders held significant power. These forms of governance were prevalent in regions like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. Over time, many ancient civilizations transitioned to monarchies, where a single ruler, often a king or emperor, held absolute power. Prominent examples include the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, and various European monarchies. Monarchies could be either absolute or constitutional, depending on the degree of checks and balances in place. The idea of democracy emerged in ancient Greece, with the city-state of Athens pioneering the concept of direct democracy, where citizens participated in decision-making through assemblies. However, this early form of democracy was limited to a small group of male citizens. Later on, in medieval Europe, feudalism was dominant, characterized by a decentralized system of land ownership and serfhood. Feudal lords held significant power over their territories, and monarchs struggled to assert a central authority. The Enlightenment period in the 17th and 18th centuries ushered in a new era of political thought, emphasizing individual rights, reason, and social contract theory. This led to the modern idea of democratic governance. The late 18th century saw two pivotal events, the American Revolution and the French Revolution, that led to the establishment of democratic republics. The United States adopted a federal democratic system, while France experienced a transition from monarchy to republic and eventually empire under Napoleon. The 19th and 20th centuries witnessed the global spread of democratic principles and the decline of absolute monarchies and empires. Many countries adopted constitutional monarchies or became democratic republics, embracing universal suffrage and individual rights. However, there were some hiccups, in that the 20th century saw the rise of authoritarian and totalitarian regimes, such as Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, which suppressed individual freedoms and sought to control every aspect of citizens' lives. When World War II ended, Germany was divided among Allied nations, and thereafter the nation was split into West and East Germany, with West Germany being democratic and East Germany becoming a satellite state to the USSR, a communist superpower. Many Eastern European nations such as Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Romania became satellite communist states. In 1990, the Cold War ended, and most former Soviet bloc nations became democracies, leading to a new movement of freedom. In 2024, countries around the world still have different forms of governments. Some are democratic republics, some have monarchies, some have socialist principles, some are communist, and some are very authoritarian. Let's look at some of the political systems now. Lots of nations today are classified as republics, which is when a country is considered a public matter and political power is derived from or at least sanctioned by the people. The United States is regarded as being the oldest surviving constitutional republic in the world, and many other later created republics were modeled after it. The U.S., along with many Western Hemisphere nations in Latin America, are full presidential republics, whereas the elected president is the head of state in government. Overseas, many European, African, and Asian nations are republics, and while some are full presidential ones, others are semi-presidential and parliamentary republics, in that elections for head of state and government are differentiated. While republics generally are associated with democratic principles, some are corrupt and seen as oligarchic. An oligarchy is a nation where the power is associated with a small number of elite individuals, typically ones who are extremely wealthy. Russia, along with some Commonwealth of independent states like Ukraine and Belarus, are seen as oligarchic. After the Cold War ended, many state-owned companies became privatized, but were given to rich people who were connected to the government. Also, Russia and Belarus have become more and more authoritarian, leading to concerns of democratic backsliding. On the other hand, in recent years, Ukraine has elected more Eurocentric and NATO-aligned candidates, with the most recent being President Vladimir Zelensky. Russia saw this as a threat and invaded Ukraine in February 2022, which, if successful, may signal Ukraine backsliding once again. Another thing republics may have issues with is internal corruption. While many republics are not very corrupt, some have higher rates. Many of the Northern and Western European republics have low levels of corruption. However, many Southern and Eastern European nations have moderate to high levels of corruption. Italy, the Czech Republic, and Poland all have moderate levels, while Hungary, Romania, Serbia, and North Macedonia have high rates. Corruption can create a problem within a nation, and if it's a republic, it can lead to autocracies. Outside of Europe, many Latin American, African, and Asian republics are heavily corrupt, which has led to many internalized issues. Numerous nations around the world are classified as monarchies, in which a monarch, usually a king or queen, is the head of state. But not all monarchies are created equal, as there are two main types, a parliamentary constitutional monarchy and an absolute monarchy. A constitutional monarchy is a nation which has a monarch as a head of state, but has a prime minister as a head of government. While the monarch may have some power in decision-making, the position is often seen as symbolic, and most decisions are associated with the parliament. One well-known one is the United Kingdom, who has King Charles as monarch and Rishi Sunak as the prime minister. One unique thing about the British monarch is that there are several Commonwealth realms, once British colonies, that still have the king as head of state. A few include Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, and like the United Kingdom are all parliamentary constitutional monarchies. Other parliamentary constitutional monarchies in Europe include Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Another interesting component associated with the Scandinavian nations is their adoption of socialistic principles. All the Scandinavian nations are considered welfare states, which are associated with generous benefits and social programs for the public, such as universal health care, free college, and other benefits. In fact, many European nations, either republics or constitutional monarchies, have something similar, but the Nordic countries have the strongest ones. Although these nations have socialist-type programs, they are not fully socialist, as all of them have high levels of political freedom. The other type of monarchy is called an absolute monarchy. In the current day and age, absolute monarchies are mostly associated with Muslim countries where Sharia law is mixed with governmental decisions. Nations with this include Saudi Arabia and Oman, although there are non-Muslim countries who are absolute monarchies, such as Eswatini in Africa. Also, Vatican City, a papal state enclave in Rome, and the center of the Roman Catholic Church, is considered an absolute monarchy. Other Middle Eastern nations are labeled as Theocracies, which are run by religion. Some include Afghanistan, in which the Taliban runs the government, and Iran, in which the Ayatollah is the supreme leader. With current absolute monarchies and theocracies, there are many governmental issues, such as the lack of freedom of citizens, rigged elections, and human rights abuses, especially against women and homosexuals. Because of this, all nations with these types of governments are moderately to highly corrupt. Communism is another governmental system associated with several nations. Although before 1990 and the end of the Cold War, there are many more communist nations. Communism is a political and economic ideology where the government controls a means of production, and there is a classless society with the goal of achieving economic and social equality. In practice, communist systems have often been characterized by one-party rule and centralized planning. China is the largest communist nation in the world today, and nearby neighbors such as North Korea, Vietnam, and Laos are communist as well. While all communist nations have somewhat of a command economy, certain ones such as China and Vietnam have created socialist market economies which have allowed for foreign investment, triggering economic growth. But others such as Cuba and especially North Korea still have majority command economies. North Korea is seen as the most command-orientated, and this has led to the nation becoming very isolationist. With this economic situation and extreme oppression of the populace, North Korea is regarded as having one of the most authoritarian governments in the world. However, China and Laos are also very authoritarian, which has led to concerns about human rights. While communist nations tend to be autocratic, other nations around the world without communist governments can be too. Myanmar is the second most autocratic nation in the world, even more so than North Korea. For many years, Myanmar was under military rule. A series of military juntas governed the country, and Myanmar experienced limited democracy during this period. Myanmar held its first democratic elections in decades in 2010, which signaled a change to more of a hybrid system. However, this wasn't very successful, and in February 2021, the Myanmar military staged a coup, alleging electoral fraud in the 2020 elections. The Central Asian nation of Turkmenistan is effectively a single-party state, with the Democratic Party of Turkmenistan as the ruling party. This party maintained a monopoly on political power, and there is no genuine multi-party system in the country. Today, Turkmenistan's political system is characterized by strict control over political, social, and economic life. There are very limited political freedoms, but opposition to the government is not tolerated. Independent media and civil society organizations are also restricted. Then there are countries with no effective government, whereas conflict and rampant instability were factors contributing to this. One example is Somalia. Somalia has experienced protracted conflict and instability, resulting in the absence of a strong central government in many parts of the country. Various regions have been controlled by different groups, including clan militias and Islamist insurgents. Efforts to establish a more effective and stable government have been ongoing. Libya in North Africa has been characterized by instability and conflict since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi's regime in 2011. The country has been divided, with multiple factions vying for power, and this has made it difficult to establish a unified and effective government. Yemen, a nation on the southwestern side of the Arabian Peninsula, has been experiencing a protracted conflict with the Houthi rebels, and this has severely impacted the functioning of the government. The country has struggled to provide essential services and maintain stability. Ultimately, a nation without a permanent government greatly impacts the citizens within, creating economic and societal difficulties. Governmental systems will always be associated with a world that has civilizations, and changes will constantly occur. Although the United States is the oldest surviving federal republic, political infighting amongst politicians and the public may change the nation in the future. As mentioned in August's episode on America's two-party system, this may become more fragmented in the future, on account that there are different ideologies within both the Democratic and Republican parties. In future elections, more third-party candidates may appear and eventually may even win presidential elections. Internally, this will be a large shift for the United States. Internationally, current autocratic governments may ultimately collapse and lead to democratic systems. However, the transition, especially in a world with multiple geopolitical problems, may come with struggles. Only the future will tell where we are headed. That's the end of today's episode. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please like it, leave a comment with your input, and subscribe to my channel, Our World, Our Planet, Our Home. Until next time.